three main benefits that we could look for when we are doing these double sessions.
Thank you, Gabby, for coming on. As usual, she's such a legend. Hey guys, so I'm in the middle of getting my glasses lens replaced and I have to kill 45 minutes and I can't stand just wasting time. So I thought I might as well come to the park next door and, film a quick video for you guys about doubling in running. Because I think it's a video I wanted to make for quite a while. So we'll explore the differences between single running and double running because there are pros and cons, benefits and trade-offs. I think that some people can start considering that moving forward because there is this connotation where double running is more for pro runners, elite runners who are already running a lot of kilometers, but I think there's more to it. But I guess I just want to have a conversation about it and also get your inputs in the comments below on what you guys think on what I say in this video. But to start off, I think the two factors that come into mind whether you should double or not would be lifestyle related and also what you want to achieve through double running. So if you want to double for the right reasons, then why not? I think the only time I would not recommend doubling would be if you're super brand new to running. I don't want to complicate running for you guys and I feel like enjoying the sport and not being overwhelmed by information and whatnot is important when you're a super new runner. But even if you don't consider yourself that experienced or, far into your running journey, I think there is a time and place for doubling if it's suitable for your lifestyle and if you think the benefits of doubling will help you out. So let's talk about all the reasons and compare single running to double running. The first thing that comes to mind though is regarding training volume and recovery. So I think with single running, you're doing one, long-ish run. You spend a bit of time getting up to fatigue and then you kind of spend a lot of time at that fatigue level, I guess you could say, for example. Whereas if you double, you have two separate runs where you have that building up to fatigue phase. And that building up to fatigue phase is obviously when you're still feeling relatively fresh. So when we think about it from a neuromuscular standpoint, and by neuromuscular, I'm talking about like the nervous system communicating with our muscles, because our brain is subconsciously telling our muscles how much to contract and whatnot. And there's obviously a lot of muscles in the lower limb. And the cumulative result of the brain communicating with all the muscles and deciding how much to contract and whatnot, that's what produces the movement of running. Running is a skill. You're not just born and you run with perfect form. Obviously, I think that when you are fresher, when you're building up to that fatigue level, you run with slightly better form, better technique. Once you are at that fatigue state, you do sacrifice a little bit of that good form. And obviously good form does contribute a little bit to preventing injuries, although there's plenty of different factors that contribute to injuries, but that's one of the factors, right? Doubling allows us to run more time with good form. So that's the first thing I want to mention. But that being said, I think it's important to have the contrary where we expose ourselves to fatigue and try and get used to running with good form even at that fatigue state. So that's why there's a time and place for both. I wouldn't say that you should completely get rid of the long run in your training and just do everything doubles, because there is benefits to doing long runs, once or twice a week as well. We're talking about metabolic benefits, musculoskeletal benefits, cardiorespiratory benefits. When we do spend more time in a single bout of exercise, we are going to stress the cardiorespiratory system, because cardiac drift, basically the further you're running and the more time you're spending running, your heart rate will kind of, slowly increase over time. It's not just going to stay at the same thing forever, because as we run more, one example is we get dehydrated, and dehydration means less blood is coming back into the heart, and if there's less blood in the heart has to pump more frequently. So it's actually inevitable. The further you get into a run, your heart rate probably is going to drift and become a bit higher over time. Same with the musculoskeletal system. We can't just be comfortable all the time and do really short runs. We need to put ourselves in that stress sometimes, get our muscles and ligaments and tendons used to the load, but also at the same time, we don't want to do that every single run. So having that variety, doubling sometimes, shorter runs, 2 doubles, and having that distinct long run once a week is beneficial. Now, the other thing is also practicality. So if you have a job where you start very early in the morning, it probably isn't really applicable for you to get up even earlier than you already have to fit in 2 runs in a day. So maybe stick to single running, because you don't have to double run to become a great runner. I think it's something that you could consider. Some people that are watching might be quite experienced or are starting to see a bit of a plateau. They're kind of wondering what they can change next to become a better runner, and that can be one thing that they can consider. The cumulative fatigue that you get in that one longer run, I guess, that also simulates a bit more of race day, right? Because you will be tired and we want to be able to run with good form in the second half of the run. But going back to doubles, doubles are a great way for active recovery. And by active recovery, we're talking about using the muscles a little bit so that blood flow goes to the area, because blood flows to wherever you're kind of working, I guess. I think when you're starting off and getting into doubles, the first thing that you would consider would be easy doubles in the second run of the day. So maybe do like a midweek long run or just like an hour or something with a double to actively recover. But it's also important to note that we don't want to double every single day, because doubling does reduce the amount of recovery time in between two runs. If we run in the morning on Monday and then the next run is Tuesday morning, we almost get 24 hours in between the two runs. But obviously if we run a double, then we're shortening that amount of time that we recover. But at the same time, we're splitting and evening out the load a bit more so that we're not overstressing in one bout of exercise. The other thing is the mental side of things as well. When we do one single long run, it's a bit more challenging mentally. We have to run for a longer amount of time. It's not easy to run for a long duration, especially when we're new to a sport. And even if you are experienced, long runs are never extremely easy. It's not the easiest run of the week. But at the same time, if you do double runs, you have to be good at time management. So there's mental benefits to both. Can you be disciplined? Can you get the runs in and be disciplined enough to get out, and also manage your time throughout the day so that you have enough time to get that double run in? Because if you don't get that double run in, your morning run was shorter and you're not getting the training volume that you want to hit in order to become that better runner. So there's mental benefits to both single running and double running. And now let's talk about how we can implement double running to our training. Obviously, if you're super new, we don't want to go straight to double threshold. If you want to know more about double threshold, I made a whole video about it with Maehara, so go check that out. And we talk about how we can progress single threshold sessions into double threshold sessions. But following a similar concept in this video, I would say, why not start with a short run followed by a long walk in the evening, just to get used to what it feels like to do 2 bouts of exercise in one day. It could even be run in the morning, strength in the afternoon, strength in the morning, run in the afternoon. That's a good way to start. And then we can progress to 2 short runs. We can progress to 1 longer run and then 1 shorter run. And then we can do stuff like workout in the morning, easy double in the afternoon as active recovery. And then we can think about like double threshold. And if we're talking about trail running and ultramarathoning, I think there's even a time and place for double long run days. What I mean by that is that one 60K run is very taxing on the body, because we know that there's always a concept of marginal returns once we increase anything in life. Yeah, it's the same thing with long running. Like when we're talking about a 4-hour long run, for example, are we really getting that extra benefit and gain over a 3-hour long run? Is it worth the injury risk and all that? It might be yes in some scenarios, it might be no in other scenarios. It kind of depends what race you're training for, how used to the training you are, have you done a lot of ultras in the past. But you know, once we go over 2 hours, we have stimulated the cardiorespiratory system enough. We're gonna get great adaptations from it anyway, so why not break it up into like a, I don't know, 3-hour and then 1 hour, or even 2-hour, 2-hour, you know? I don't know. I think it depends on different scenarios of how you break up the really long run into 2 long runs. But I think there can be a lot of benefits in splitting a 50K long run into 2. Although there's, again, a time and place for both still. So I think the main point is just like, if I'm training for Bondi and Manly, I wouldn't do a 50K long run every single weekend, but maybe alternate between, you know, 45 to 50K long run, and then the next week I would do 2 long runs on the same day, like 20K, 20K, or 30K, 15K, something like that. And then go back to another long run weekend where I do 1 long run, like 45 to 50K. So variety, always important. All my videos stem back to the same thing, variety. Let's expose ourselves, our bodies, to different stimulus so that our bodies have to adapt to it. We all know from science that you have to give your body a bit of stress, because then the body kind of super compensates to adapt and be able to handle that. Same with strength training. We strength train so that we can handle the load. Same with VO2 max training. We're trying to stimulate and stress that aerobic system so that we have this adaptation, and therefore we're able to process more oxygen at a given intensity, right? And then we become way more efficient. Our running economy is increased. We can run at the same pace for a longer amount of time, or we can run at the same pace with an easier effort. And that all comes from adding that variety. And we want to hit different paces, we want to hit different types of training, see what works for us. So that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. I think there is one more thing that I do want to mention about double running though, and that is the effect on the glycogen storage, right? Because one long run will deplete glycogen storage a fair amount, and you will have to rely a bit more on your fat system later on in the run. Whereas splitting up the two runs, we're relying heavily on utilizing glycogen efficiently. That's my understanding. But at the same time, I feel like this would be a great time to ask my friend Gabby to give a bit of insight on how single runs and double runs can affect the glycogen storage system and anything regarding nutrition. So let's quickly pass it on to her and see what she has to say.
From a nutrition perspective, there are a few benefits and considerations for us to keep in mind when we're looking at double training sessions. When it comes to the benefits, there are three main benefits that we could look for when we are doing these double sessions. The first one is that fuel efficiency. Normally, when we do a training session, our body tends to prioritize carbohydrate utilization first. So if we want our body to become efficient at using that glycogen, having two shorter sessions of moderate to high intensity could be really helpful in stimulating our body at utilizing that glycogen. On the flip side, we can also use a different approach that is considered the train low approach. In this case, what we do is use the first session to deplete the glycogen stores. So in that case, it is a session that tends to be of higher intensity where the body prioritizes that carbohydrate utilization. And the second session to stimulate fat oxidation. The way we do that is by avoiding the replenishment of that glycogen for that first session and making sure that the second session is more aerobic, of lower intensity, where that stimulation of that fat utilization is there. Now, when we are looking at this type of training, it's really important to know that this is quite taxing for the body, because for us to train low in the second half of the day, the recovery for that first session is very different to what would be ideal, which means that that carbohydrate intake is going to be almost minimal because we want to keep those glycogen stores depleted to maximize that fat oxidation. And the third benefit that we can see from here is the gut training. Normally, a training session in the morning for most people happens quite early, so a lot of people don't feel inclined to eat too much beforehand. However, the benefit of having that second session in the second half of the day means that we can allocate more time to eat beforehand and keep our body comfortable while we're doing that training session. Over time, that is what's going to happen because our body is getting really good at absorbing that nutrition and using it for training. When we look at the considerations, to make sure that these sessions go really well, it's going to be very important to look at the objective. If what we want is both training sessions to be of really good quality, then how we approach the recovery for the first training session is going to be critical, because that first training session is already using resources, is already creating some damage in our muscles, and that is why it's going to be important first resupply that fuel, which is going to be predominantly carbohydrate, and second, support with protein for that muscle recovery, knowing that we have a shorter window to do this. Normally, when we train once per day, well, usually we have, let's say, 24 hours to recover where we're fueling throughout that time. In this case, we're looking at 6 to 8 hours, depending on how soon or close to each other you're going to have these training sessions. So that's why it is really important that we're very deliberate about our nutrition choices after that first session. The next thing to look at is if we're looking at that second session to be in that train low, the recovery for this first session will need to be different, where at all times we're going to prioritize protein, but we need to take it easy with the carbohydrate and keep it minimal since we don't want to replenish that glycogen. And of course, it's going to be important that that second session, where now we have achieved the objective of either very good quality training session or that fuel efficiency, we still look at replenishing those resources, because in the case of the quality training session, well, our body of course used the glycogen. Of course, there was some muscle damage, so we want to replenish the fuel, we want to use the protein to repair the muscles. And in the case of a training session where we were prioritizing fat oxidation, well, in that case it's even more important because we've been coming from a day where the resources were used a lot and we haven't been replenishing as much as we should. So after that second training session is going to be so important to replenish with the carbohydrate, to supply the body with protein, and not only in the next few hours, also looking at the next 12 to 24 hours, being very mindful that what we did the day before was quite taxing, and it's going to be very important to be deliberate about this fuel intake.
Now, I'm recording this before I got an answer from her, so I don't know what she just said in this video, but again, thank you, Gabby, for coming on, as usual. She is such a legend. Go check out her Instagram. She makes really great content. Alrighty, so I'm walking around the park and I realized that there's one more thing I thought I'd mention. I recently made a video about musculoskeletal fatigue versus cardiorespiratory fatigue, and I talked about how I noticed when I'm coming back from injury, my heart rate and respiratory system, breathing system, seem to be still relatively fit, but I lost more of that musculoskeletal adaptation, and therefore I wanted my body to get used to the pounding on the pavement, running a lot, because running is an impact sport. So a good way to get better at that is by increasing mileage safely. I realized that maybe doubling would be a great way to get my legs used to that again. So I wasn't too fussed about getting the long single runs in, and it was more like, can we double and get used to running frequently again so that my legs are accustomed to getting out there frequently, time on feet, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I guess it's still really applicable to where you are in your training as well. I think the main thing is you have to have a good understanding and knowledge about everything, and then apply everything to your situation. So with anything in running, it's not like pro runners should do this and beginner runners should do that. There's a lot of overlap, but it kind of just depends how you apply it. And if you have a reason to do something, I think you're fine. So always do things with reason. I think one final note I want to end on is to make sure you're eating enough, because whether you're single running or double running, as runners, we are putting our body through a lot of stress. We use carbohydrates to remodel our bones, to increase our bone density and all that. But we also use carbohydrates to fuel our runs. We need carbohydrates to run at running intensity, because fat is not an efficient fuel source. So again, running uses carbs, remodeling our bones, recovery requires carbs. So carbohydrates are super important, but also protein and everything else as well, balanced diet. But eating enough is crucial, and I think everyone should be more worried about eating enough rather than eating too much. It's hard to eat too much as runners. But again, not nutritionist advice, but I think I do want to emphasize the importance of eating enough. Either way, I didn't really plan this video because, I'm just waiting for my glasses to be done, but hope this was structured and informative enough that you guys got something out of it. Leave a like as usual, comment below if you have any questions, and we can have a conversation about anything else that I may have missed. And also obviously subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.